Imagine this. You wake up one morning, the sun streaming through your window, the world outside buzzing with life. You stretch, take a deep breath, and prepare to face the day. But as you step into the world, something feels off. You smile at the barista, nod politely to your neighbor, and laugh at your colleague's joke, even though it wasn't funny. You say yes to a request you don't have time for, suppress your frustration when someone cuts you off in traffic, and bite your tongue when a friend makes a comment that stings. By the end of the day, you're exhausted. Not from physical labor, but from the sheer effort of being nice. You crawl into bed, your mind racing. You replay the day, wondering why you feel so empty. You did everything right, didn't you? You were kind, accommodating, and agreeable. You avoided conflict, kept the peace, and made sure everyone around you was comfortable. So why do you feel like a stranger to yourself? Why does it feel like you've been living someone else's life? This is the paradox of niceness, a virtue so universally praised, yet so often corrosive to the soul. We are taught from childhood that being nice is the ultimate moral good. It's the glue that holds society together, the currency of relationships, the hallmark of a good person. But what if this relentless pursuit of niceness comes at a hidden cost? What if, in our quest to be liked, accepted, and approved of, we are slowly eroding the very essence of who we are? Consider this. When was the last time you said no without guilt? When was the last time you expressed an unpopular opinion, set a boundary, or allowed yourself to be fully seen, flaws and all? If you're like most people, these moments are rare. Instead, you've learned to wear a mask, to smooth over your edges, to shrink yourself so others can feel bigger. You become a master of self-sacrifice, a curator of other people's comfort. But beneath the surface, a quiet rebellion stirs. A voice whispers, "This is not who you are." The great question, then, is this: what happens when niceness becomes a prison? When the desire to be good eclipses the need to be real? When the fear of rejection outweighs the courage to be authentic? We live in a world that rewards conformity, that values harmony over truth, that praises the agreeable over the authentic. But at what cost? What are we sacrificing on the altar of niceness? And more importantly, is there a way to break free? This is not just a question of personal discomfort. It's a question of identity, of freedom, of what it means to truly live. Because if being nice requires us to betray ourselves, to silence our inner voice, to deny our deepest desires and truths, then is it really a virtue? Or is it a subtle form of self-destruction? As you lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, the weight of these questions presses down on you. You feel the tension between who you are and who you think you should be. You sense the invisible chains that bind you, the unspoken rules that govern your behavior. And you wonder, is there another way? A way to be kind without losing yourself, to be compassionate without being a doormat, to be good without being too good. The answer, as you'll soon discover, lies not in rejecting niceness altogether, but in understanding its hidden cost. It lies in unraveling the psychological and societal forces that compel us to prioritize others' comfort over our own authenticity. It lies in confronting the uncomfortable truth that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for others is to stop being so damn nice. But before we can break free, we must first understand the chains that bind us. We must delve into the hidden problem, its psychological roots, and the unseen consequences of always being nice. Only then can we begin to imagine a different way of being, one that honors both our humanity and our individuality. So take a deep breath. The journey ahead is not an easy one, but it is necessary, because the cost of always being nice is far greater than you realize, and the freedom that awaits on the other side is worth every step. To understand the hidden cost of always being nice, we must first confront a startling truth. Niceness is not inherently virtuous. It is not a pure expression of kindness or compassion. Rather, it is often a mask, a carefully constructed facade designed to protect us from rejection, conflict, and the discomfort of being truly seen. Beneath this mask lies a complex web of psychological and societal forces, each pulling us further away from our authentic selves. Consider the work of Carl Jung, the pioneering psychologist who explored the depths of the human psyche. Jung introduced the concept of the persona, the social mask we wear to navigate the world. The persona is not inherently bad. It serves a practical purpose, allowing us to function in society. But when we become too attached to our persona, when we mistake it for our true self, we risk losing touch with our deeper, more authentic nature. This is the danger of niceness. It becomes a persona so ingrained, so automatic, that we forget who we are beneath it. Why do we cling to this mask? Why do we prioritize niceness over authenticity? The answer lies in our primal need for belonging. As social creatures, We are hardwired to seek connection and acceptance. From an evolutionary perspective, being ostracized from the group was a death sentence. Today, the stakes may be lower, but the fear remains. We fear rejection, judgment, and the existential loneliness that comes with being different. And so, we conform. We suppress our true thoughts and feelings, molding ourselves into what we believe others want us to be. This fear is amplified by societal conditioning. From a young age, we are taught that niceness is synonymous with goodness. We are rewarded for being polite, obedient, and agreeable. We are punished for being assertive, outspoken, or different. Over time, these lessons become internalized, shaping our beliefs about what it means to be a good person. We learn to equate niceness with morality and authenticity with selfishness. We learn to prioritize harmony over truth, even when it comes at the expense of our own well-being. But the roots of this problem run even deeper. Philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche and Arthur Schopenhauer have long grappled with the tension between individuality and conformity. Nietzsche, in particular, warned against the dangers of herd morality, the tendency to adopt the values and behaviors of the majority, often at the expense of one's own unique potential. He saw this as a form of self-betrayal, a way of numbing ourselves to the fullness of life. Similarly, Schopenhauer argued that true freedom lies in the ability to think and act independently, even when it means going against the grain. Yet, despite these warnings, we continue to prioritize niceness over authenticity. Why? Because it's easier. It's easier to smile and nod than to risk conflict. It's easier to say yes than to set boundaries. It's easier to blend than to stand out. But this ease comes at a cost. Every time we suppress our true thoughts and feelings, every time we prioritize others' comfort over our own, we chip away at our sense of self. We become strangers to ourselves, living lives that feel hollow and unfulfilled. This is the hidden problem. Niceness, when taken to an extreme, becomes a form of self-erasure. It is a way of shrinking ourselves to fit into the expectations of others, of denying our own needs and desires in the name of being good. And while this may seem noble on the surface, it is ultimately a betrayal of our humanity. As Jean-Paul Sartre famously wrote, "Hell is other people. But perhaps the real hell is the version of ourselves we create to please them." The psychological toll of this self-betrayal is profound. Studies have shown that people who consistently suppress their emotions and prioritize others' needs over their own are at higher risk for anxiety, depression, and burnout. They are more likely to feel disconnected from themselves and others, more likely to struggle with low self-esteem and a lack of purpose. This is the price of niceness, a life half-lived, a self half-realized. But the problem is not just personal, it is also societal. When we prioritize niceness over authenticity, we perpetuate a culture of superficiality and conformity. We create a world where people are afraid to speak their truth, where differences are smoothed over rather than celebrated, where true connection is replaced by polite small talk. This is the world we live in, a world that values harmony over honesty, agreement over authenticity, niceness over depth. And yet, there is hope, because the very forces that bind us also contain the seeds of liberation. By understanding the psychological and philosophical roots of our niceness, we can begin to unravel its hold on us. We can begin to question the beliefs and behaviors that keep us trapped, to challenge the societal norms that demand our conformity. We can begin to imagine a different way of being, one that honors both our humanity and our individuality. But this is not an easy task. It requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to confront the uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world we live in. It requires us to ask difficult questions. What am I afraid of? What am I hiding from? What would happen if I stopped being so nice? The answers to these questions will not come easily, but they are essential if we are to break free from the hidden cost of always being nice. For it is only by confronting the problem that we can begin to imagine a solution, a way of living that is both kind and authentic, both compassionate and true. And so, we turn to the next chapter of this journey, the unseen consequences of niceness. For it is only by understanding the full extent of its impact on our lives, our relationships, and our society that we can begin to chart a path toward freedom. The road ahead is not an easy one, but it is necessary, because the cost of always being nice is far greater than we realize. And the freedom that awaits on the other side is worth every step. The cost of always being nice is not always visible. It doesn't announce itself with dramatic flair or catastrophic collapse. Instead, it seeps into the cracks of your life, quietly shaping your reality in ways you may not even notice. It's in the relationships that feel shallow and unfulfilling, the opportunities you let slip by, the dreams you tuck away because they might inconvenience someone else. It's in the gnawing sense of emptiness that follows you, even when everything on the surface seems fine. These are the unseen consequences of niceness, the silent, insidious ways it erodes your sense of self and distorts your world. Let's start with relationships. On the surface, being nice seems like the key to connection. After all, who doesn't want to be around someone who's agreeable, accommodating, and always willing to lend a hand? But dig a little deeper, and you'll find that niceness often creates a barrier to true intimacy. When you're always wearing a mask, when you're always saying what you think others want to hear, you prevent others from seeing the real you. And if they can't see the real you, how can they truly know you? How can they love you for who you are, rather than who you pretend to be? This dynamic creates a paradox. The nicer you are, the lonelier you feel. You may have a wide circle of acquaintances, but few, if any, truly understand you. Your relationships become transactional, built on a foundation of politeness rather than authenticity. You give and give, hoping that your niceness will be reciprocated, but it rarely is. Instead, you find yourself surrounded by people who take you for granted, who expect you to always be there, always be agreeable, always be nice. And when you inevitably reach your breaking point, when you finally say no or express a need, they're shocked, even offended. Because to them, you're not a person with your own desires and boundaries. You're a role, a function, a convenience. This is the tragedy of niceness. It robs you of the very connection it promises to create. It leaves you feeling unseen, unheard, and unvalued. And it's not just your relationships with others that suffer. It's your relationship with yourself. Every time you suppress your true thoughts and feelings, every time you prioritize others' comfort over your own, you send yourself a message. You don't matter. Your needs are less important. Your voice is not worth hearing. Over time, this message becomes internalized, shaping your self-image and eroding your self-worth. But the consequences don't stop there. Niceness also shapes the way you move through the world, the opportunities you pursue, the risks you take or don't take. Think about it. How many times have you held back from speaking up in a meeting, pursuing a passion, or asserting a boundary because you didn't want to rock the boat? How many times have you said yes when you wanted to say no, simply because you didn't want to disappoint someone? Each of these moments may seem small, insignificant, but cumulatively, they add up to a life that feels constrained, unfulfilled, and out of alignment with your true desires. This is the insidious power of niceness. It doesn't just affect your external circumstances, it shapes your internal world. It creates a feedback loop of self-doubt and self-denial, reinforcing the belief that your needs are secondary, your voice is unimportant, your desires are selfish. And the more you buy into this belief, the harder it becomes to break free. You become trapped in a cycle of people-pleasing, constantly seeking validation from others while neglecting the most important relationship of all, the one with yourself. The societal consequences of niceness are equally profound. When niceness becomes the default mode of interaction, it creates a culture of superficiality and avoidance. People stop saying what they really think, stop addressing conflicts directly, stop engaging in meaningful dialogue. Instead, they default to polite small talk, passive-aggressive behavior, and unspoken resentments. This may keep the peace in the short term, but in the long term, it erodes trust, stifles creativity, and prevents genuine connection. Consider the workplace, for example. In a culture that prioritizes niceness over honesty, employees are less likely to speak up about problems, share innovative ideas, or challenge the status quo. They're more likely to go along with decisions they disagree with, to avoid difficult conversations, to prioritize harmony over progress. The result? Stagnation, mediocrity, and a lack of accountability. The same dynamic plays out in families, friendships, and communities, creating a world where people are more concerned with being liked than with being real. And then there's the toll on mental health. Studies have shown that people who consistently suppress their emotions and prioritize others' needs over their own are at higher risk for anxiety, depression, and burnout. They're more likely to feel disconnected from themselves and others, more likely to struggle with low self-esteem and a lack of purpose. This is the hidden cost of niceness. A life that looks good on the outside but feels hollow on the inside. But perhaps the most insidious consequence of niceness is the way it perpetuates inequality and injustice. When we prioritize niceness over authenticity, we silence the voices that need to be heard the most. We discourage people from speaking out against injustice, from challenging the status quo, from demanding change. We create a world where the loudest voices are often the least authentic, where the people who are most willing to disrupt the peace are the ones who are most needed. This is the world we live in. A world that values niceness over truth, harmony over justice, agreement over progress. And it's a world that exacts a heavy toll on all of us, whether we realize it or not. But the good news is that we don't have to accept this as our reality. We can choose to break free from the unseen consequences of niceness, to reclaim our authenticity, and to create a world that values truth over politeness, connection over conformity, and justice over harmony. The first step is awareness. We must recognize the ways in which niceness has shaped our lives, our relationships, and our society. We must confront the uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world we live in. And we must be willing to challenge the beliefs and behaviors that keep us trapped in the cycle of people-pleasing. The road ahead is not an easy one. It requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to embrace discomfort. But the rewards are worth it, because on the other side of niceness lies a life that is richer, deeper, and more authentic. A life where you are truly seen, heard, and valued, not for the mask you wear, but for the person you are. And so, we turn to the next chapter of this journey, the rebellion. For it is only by breaking free from the unseen consequences of niceness that we can begin to reclaim our power, our voice, and our truth. The path ahead is not without its challenges, but it is a path worth taking, because the cost of always being nice is far greater than we realize, and the freedom that awaits on the other side is worth every step. Breaking free from the hidden cost of always being nice is not a passive act. It is a rebellion, a deliberate, often uncomfortable, and profoundly transformative process of reclaiming your authenticity. This rebellion is not about rejecting kindness or compassion. It's about rejecting the false self you've created to please others. It's about dismantling the persona of niceness and rediscovering the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are. It's about learning to say no without guilt, to set boundaries without apology, and to prioritize your own needs without shame. But how do you begin this rebellion? How do you untangle yourself from the web of societal expectations, internalized beliefs, and deeply ingrained habits that have kept you trapped in the cycle of niceness? The answer lies in a radical shift in perspective, one that challenges everything you thought you knew about being good, being liked, and being accepted. The first step is to recognize that niceness is not the same as kindness. Kindness is rooted in authenticity. It comes from a place of genuine care and compassion. Niceness, on the other hand, is often rooted in fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being seen as selfish or difficult. Kindness is about giving freely, without expectation. Niceness is about giving to gain approval, to avoid discomfort, to maintain the status quo. This distinction is crucial because it allows you to start separating your true self from the mask you've been wearing. Once you've made this distinction, the next step is to confront your fear of conflict. For many people, the fear of conflict is the driving force behind their niceness. They avoid setting boundaries, expressing disagreement, or asserting their needs because they're afraid of upsetting others. But here's the truth: conflict is not inherently bad. In fact, it's often necessary for growth, both personally and relationally. Conflict can lead to deeper understanding, stronger connections, and more authentic relationships. The key is to approach conflict with curiosity and compassion, rather than fear and avoidance. This is easier said than done, of course. It requires practice, patience, and a willingness to tolerate discomfort. Start small. Practice saying no to minor requests. Express a differing opinion in a low-stakes conversation. Set a boundary with someone you trust. Notice how it feels, the initial discomfort, the fear of rejection, the relief that follows. Over time, these small acts of rebellion will build your confidence and strengthen your ability to assert yourself in more significant ways. Another crucial aspect of breaking free from niceness is learning to prioritize your own needs. This doesn't mean becoming selfish or disregarding others. It means recognizing that your needs are just as important as anyone else's. It means understanding that you cannot pour from an empty cup, that you cannot truly care for others if you are neglecting yourself. This shift in mindset is revolutionary because it challenges the deeply ingrained belief that self-sacrifice is virtuous. To make this shift, start by identifying your core needs, the things that are essential to your well-being, your happiness, and your sense of purpose. These might include things like rest, creativity, connection, or personal growth. Once you've identified these needs, make a commitment to prioritize them, even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. This might mean saying no to a social event so you can have a quiet night at home. It might mean carving out time for a hobby that brings you joy, even if it means less time for others. It might mean asking for help when you need it, rather than trying to do everything yourself. As you begin to prioritize your own needs, you'll likely encounter resistance, both from others and from yourself. People who are used to your niceness may push back when you start setting boundaries or asserting your needs. They may accuse you of being selfish, difficult, or unkind. This is where your rebellion will be tested. Will you cave to their expectations, or will you stand firm in your commitment to authenticity? Remember, their discomfort is not your responsibility. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotions or maintaining their comfort at the expense of your own. At the same time, you'll need to confront your own internal resistance. The voice in your head that says, "You're being selfish. You're going to upset people. You're not being nice." This voice is not your friend. It's the voice of fear, of conditioning, of the persona you've outgrown. When this voice arises, acknowledge it, but don't let it dictate your actions. Remind yourself that prioritizing your needs is not selfish, it's necessary. It's an act of self-respect, self-love, and self-preservation. As you continue on this path of rebellion, you'll begin to notice shifts in your relationships. Some people may struggle with your newfound assertiveness. They may pull away or try to guilt you into returning to your old ways. These are not the relationships that will sustain you in the long term. The people who truly care about you, the ones who value you for who you are, not just for what you can do for them, will respect your boundaries and celebrate your authenticity. These are the relationships worth investing in, the ones that will nourish and support you as you continue to grow. Breaking free from niceness also requires a shift in how you see yourself. For so long, you've defined your worth in terms of how much you give, how much you accommodate, how much you please others. It's time to redefine your worth in terms of who you are, your strengths, your passions, your values, your unique perspective on the world. This is not an easy process. It requires deep self-reflection and a willingness to confront the parts of yourself you've been hiding. But it's also an incredibly liberating process because it allows you to step into your full potential, to live a life that is truly your own. Finally, remember that this rebellion is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing process. There will be moments when you slip back into old patterns, when the fear of conflict or the desire for approval feels overwhelming. That's okay. What matters is that you keep coming back to your commitment to authenticity, that you keep choosing yourself, even when it's hard. The rebellion against niceness is not just a personal journey, it's a cultural one. By breaking free from the constraints of niceness, you are contributing to a larger shift, a shift toward a world that values authenticity over conformity, truth over politeness, and justice over harmony. This is the ultimate act of rebellion, not just reclaiming your own life, but helping to create a world where everyone has the freedom to do the same. And so, we turn to the final chapter of this journey, the ultimate truth. For it is only by fully embracing the lessons of this rebellion that we can arrive at the most powerful realization of all, a realization that redefines not just how we see ourselves, but how we see the world. The road ahead is not without its challenges, but it is a road worth taking, because the cost of always being nice is far greater than we realize. And the freedom that awaits on the other side is worth every step. The journey to break free from the hidden cost of always being nice is not just about reclaiming your voice or setting boundaries. It's about something far deeper, far more profound. It's about uncovering the ultimate truth, that your worth is not contingent on how much you give, how much you accommodate, or how much you please others. Your worth is inherent. It is not something you earn. It is something you are. This realization is the key to true freedom, the freedom to be fully, unapologetically yourself. This truth is not new. Philosophers, mystics, and thinkers throughout history have pointed to it in various ways. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, wrote extensively about the importance of finding meaning in life, even in the face of unimaginable suffering. He argued that our deepest sense of worth comes not from external validation, but from our ability to choose our response to life's challenges. Similarly, The existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre emphasized the concept of radical freedom, the idea that we are fundamentally free to define ourselves, regardless of the circumstances we find ourselves in. These ideas may sound abstract, but they have profound practical implications. If your worth is inherent, then you don't need to prove it to anyone, not to your family, your friends, your coworkers, or society at large. You don't need to earn love, respect, or acceptance by being nice, by being agreeable, by being what others want you to be. You are enough, just as you are. This is the ultimate truth, the final and most powerful realization. But here's the catch. This truth is not something you can simply intellectualize. It's not enough to say, "I am enough," and expect your life to magically transform. This truth must be felt, embodied, and lived. It must permeate every aspect of your being, from the way you think to the way you act to the way you relate to others. And this process of embodiment is not easy. It requires you to confront your deepest fears, to question your most deeply held beliefs, and to let go of the identities and roles you've clung to for so long. One of the most challenging aspects of embodying this truth is learning to tolerate discomfort. For so long, you've used niceness as a way to avoid discomfort, to avoid conflict, rejection, and the fear of being seen as selfish or difficult. But the truth is, discomfort is an inevitable part of growth. It's the price of authenticity. When you start setting boundaries, expressing your true thoughts and feelings, and prioritizing your own needs, you will inevitably upset some people. You will inevitably face criticism, judgment, and even rejection. And that's okay, because the discomfort of being true to yourself is far less painful than the slow, soul-crushing erosion of self-betrayal. Another challenge is learning to trust yourself. For so long, you've looked to others for validation, for approval, for a sense of worth. But the ultimate truth is that you are the only one who can validate yourself. You are the only one who can truly know what's right for you, what's true for you, what's meaningful for you. This doesn't mean you should ignore feedback or dismiss the perspectives of others. It simply means that the final authority on your life must be you. This requires a deep trust in your own intuition, your own judgment, your own inner wisdom. As you begin to embody this truth, you'll notice a profound shift in the way you relate to others. You'll no longer feel the need to people please, to seek approval, or to conform to others' expectations. Instead, you'll approach relationships from a place of authenticity and mutual respect. You'll be able to give freely, not because you feel obligated, but because you genuinely want to. You'll be able to love deeply, not because you need to be loved in return, but because love is an expression of your true self. And you'll be able to connect more meaningfully because you'll no longer be hiding behind a mask. This shift will also transform the way you see the world. You'll begin to recognize the ways in which niceness has been used as a tool of control, a way to maintain the status quo and suppress individuality. You'll see how societal norms and expectations have been designed to keep people in line, to discourage dissent, and to perpetuate inequality. And you'll feel a deep sense of responsibility to challenge these norms, to speak your truth, and to create a world where everyone has the freedom to be themselves. But perhaps the most profound transformation will be in the way you see yourself. You'll no longer see yourself as a collection of roles, masks, and personas. You'll no longer define yourself in terms of how much you give, how much you achieve, or how much you please others. Instead, you'll see yourself as a unique, irreplaceable individual, a person with inherent worth, with a unique perspective, with a sacred purpose. You'll see yourself as someone who is worthy of love, respect, and acceptance, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. This is the ultimate truth, that you are enough, that your worth is inherent, that your voice matters, that your needs are valid, that your truth is worth speaking. This truth is not just a realization, it's a revolution. It's a revolution against the forces that have kept you small, that have silenced your voice, that have eroded your sense of self. It's a revolution that begins within you, but that has the power to transform the world. And so, as you stand on the precipice of this new way of being, take a moment to reflect on how far you've come. You've confronted the hidden cost of niceness. You've unraveled its psychological and societal roots. You've faced the unseen consequences and begun the rebellion to break free. And now, you've arrived at the ultimate truth, a truth that redefines not just how you see yourself, but how you see the world. the road ahead is not without its challenges. There will be moments of doubt, moments of fear, moments when the old patterns of niceness try to pull you back in. But you are stronger than those patterns. You are more powerful than those fears. You are more authentic than any mask you've ever worn. And you are worthy of a life that is rich, deep, and true. So take a deep breath. Step into your power. Speak your truth. And know that the freedom you've been seeking has been within you all along. The cost of always being nice is far greater than you realized. But the freedom that awaits on the other side is worth every step. This is your life. This is your truth. This is your revolution. And it starts now.